You ever wake up one day and realize someone's been stealing from you for weeks? Not breaking in, not sneaking through your window, just walking onto your property like they own the place and siphoning electricity from your home like you're running a public power station. Yeah, that was me. And the thief? My HOA president, Kerren, with a Tesla. What started as a few weird spikes in my power bill turned into a full-blown suburban war zone, complete with hidden cameras, legal threats, sabotage, and a trap that would literally fry her little energy-stealing empire. This is the story of how I took down a power-hungry HOA tyrant who thought she was untouchable, until she wasn't. If you love stories where justice hits harder than a surge of 240 volts, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more wild true stories, and buckle up, because this one's about to get electric. I woke up to a faint electric hum vibrating through the silence of the night. It was that kind of sound you only notice when everything else is dead quiet. At first, I thought it was in my head, until the porch light flickered twice, then dimmed. I sat up, blinking. Something was off. The clock on my nightstand reset. I got out of bed, barefoot, and stepped onto the cold hardwood floor. It creaked under my weight as I crept toward the front door. A soft bluish glow bathed the edges of the blinds like a scene from a sci-fi movie. I opened the door and felt the crisp night air slap me in the face. There it was again. Kerren's Tesla, parked right next to my garage, plugged into my outdoor outlet. I stood there, staring like a man watching his house being robbed in slow motion. The charging light on the Tesla pulsed like it was breathing. I could smell the faint plastic tang of overheated electronics. The extension cord snaked across my lawn like a thief's trail. My fists clenched. This was the 5th time this week. I yanked the cord out without saying a word. The Tesla made a chirp like a wounded animal. I half expected her to come running, out screaming, but the night remained still. Just me, the cord, and the rising boil of fury in my gut. I looked around. No witnesses. No one to back me up. Just my word against hers. Again. I never asked to be part of the HOA. It was baked into the deal when I bought the house. Small price for a quiet neighborhood. Clean streets. Good schools. Trees lining every sidewalk like a brochure come to life. But no one told me about Kerren, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. Blonde pixie cut always in yoga pants, always with a clipboard in hand. Her Tesla was her throne, and her smug smile was a permanent fixture. She acted like every house on the block was hers, and the rest of us were just lucky to be tolerated. The first time she used my outlet, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe her charger didn't reach. Maybe she thought it was public access. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Big mistake. I caught her the second time and asked her politely not to do it again. She gave me a puzzled look, like I'd just spoken a foreign language, then said, "It's just a few volts, don't be so dramatic." And that was that. But my electric bill told a different story. $75 higher in 1 week. That might not sound like much until you realize it was just from overnight charging. I installed a security camera discreetly aimed at the side of my garage. And sure enough, there she was. Almost every night. Pulling in like it was her private charging station. Plugging in without shame. Sometimes sipping coffee while the charge ticked up. I tried to be civil. Approached her during the next HOA meeting. Held in her driveway, of course, with fold-out chairs and lemonade she insisted was organic. I stood up mid-meeting holding a printed photo from the security footage. "This is you charging your Tesla on my property without permission," I said. She didn't even blink. Instead, she laughed. a shrill, dismissive sound that bounced off the vinyl siding of her house. "Oh, that I thought you offered to share. You said you weren't using it anyway." "Did I?" She turned to the other members of the board. Mostly her friends retired folks with nothing better to do. Everyone laughed with her. It was like being in a dream where no one listens to you, no matter how loud you scream. She leaned back in her chair with that smug half-smile. "It's not like you're losing money. We're all part of the community. And you know what they say. Sharing is caring." I said it was theft. She called me paranoid. I said I'd report her. She said, "Maybe you're not HOA material." The more I pushed, the worse it got. I blocked the outlet with a lockbox. The next morning, it was broken off. I replaced it with a tamper-proof cover. 2 nights later, it was gone. My camera caught her doing it, but when I showed the footage to the HOA, they dismissed it as doctored. Someone even claimed I had a vendetta against Kerren. That I was the problem. Then came the fines. My grass was too long. My porch light was too bright. My trash bin was half an inch past the curb. Every time I filed a complaint, I received one in return. It became a game I wasn't allowed to win. Kerren had weaponized the HOA, and I was her chosen target. There's a special kind of exhaustion that comes from being gaslit by an entire community. I started to doubt my own sense of justice. Was I overreacting? Was it really worth it to keep fighting back? But every time I saw that Tesla glowing in my driveway like a parasite feeding off my home, I remembered who I was. My father taught me better. He was an electrician, a man who respected power, both literal and figurative. He used to say, "Electricity reveals character. You play with it, you better know what you're doing." So I stopped fighting her game. I started planning my own. I stood in my garage staring at the breaker box. The hum of the house filled my ears, steady and low like a war drum. My tools lay neatly on the workbench. I didn't need permission. I didn't need revenge. I needed resolution. Kerren thought she was smart, thought she'd won. But she forgot one thing: you never steal power from an electrician, and you sure as hell don't make him angry. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I spent the next 2 days studying the Tesla charger specs down to the last detail. Voltage, amperage, grounding requirements, every technical nuance. Kerren had made one fatal mistake. She assumed I was just a regular guy with a garage and a grudge. What she didn't know was I had been working in residential and commercial electrical systems for 15 years. I knew how power flowed, I knew how to make it dance, and I knew how to build a circuit that would fry her arrogant little setup, without leaving a mark on my own system. I wanted her to feel safe, confident, entitled. She needed to think she'd won, so I took the lock off the outlet. I even swept the driveway and left a clean, open path to it. I removed the camera, left everything wide open like an invitation wrapped in a smile. The bait had to look real. And sure enough, the very next night, just past midnight, the Tesla rolled, up quiet and smug as ever. I stood behind the curtains, eyes narrowed, as the cord snaked from my outlet to her charging port like a thief's handshake. She didn't even look around, just plugged in and walked away. What she didn't realize was I had installed a modified dummy outlet inside the original box. It looked and felt exactly like the real thing. But behind it, I built a circuit that tripped a timed relay, once a steady. Current was detected. That relay connected to a coil rigged with a high-frequency pulse disruptor. It wouldn't damage a phone or a lamp, but to a delicate EV charging module, it might as well have been lightning. It was perfectly legal, perfectly undetectable. and perfectly devastating. I waited. 3 hours later, I heard the click. Not the usual chirp from the Tesla. A sharp pop like a fuse snapping. Then silence. I peeked through the blinds and saw her car completely dark. No lights, no hum, no blinking indicators. Just a silent, dead machine sitting in my driveway like a fallen god. I allowed myself one smile. Not wide. Just enough to feel the justice settle in my chest, like a warm ember. By morning, the Tesla was still there. Kerren was pacing around it on the phone, gesturing wildly. Her robe flapped in the wind, and she looked 10 shades less composed than usual. Her pristine blonde bob was a frizzy mess. I stepped out casually, coffee in hand, and waved. She didn't wave back. A few hours later, a flatbed truck came to tow the EBV car. I watched from the porch as they struggled to get it in neutral. Apparently, the internal systems were fried so thoroughly the fail-safes wouldn't engage. 2 guys had to manually jack it up and roll it onto the platform. Kerren stood with her arms crossed, muttering into her phone. She wouldn't even look at me. But that wasn't the real payoff. That came later. That evening, she called an emergency HOA meeting. Held in her driveway, of course. I showed up just for sport. The whole neighborhood was buzzing about her car. Some whispered about sabotage, others blamed the charger itself. She was red-faced, fuming, accusing me in vague statements without actually saying my name. Someone must have tampered with the outlet. Someone jealous or bitter or maybe just unstable. She let the word unstable hang in the air like a fart in church. I sipped my coffee, said nothing. Then came the part that sealed it. She tried to bill. The HOA for the damages claimed it happened on community property, said the outlet should have been secured, demanded compensation. That was her real play. She wanted everyone else to pay for her mistake. She figured she had enough sway to pull it off, but she overplayed her hand. Old Mr. Jensen, the HOA treasurer, leaned forward and cleared his throat. Actually, Kerren, that outlet, is clearly on his property, he said. We reviewed the plot maps last year, remember. Her mouth hung open like a malfunctioning puppet. She tried to spin it. Said I invited her to use it. That I made it confusing. That maybe I'd booby-trapped it on purpose. That's a serious accusation, said Jensen. Do you have proof? She hesitated. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. And then someone else spoke. It was Linda from 2 doors down. She pulled out her phone and said, I have video. Kerren's been using that outlet for weeks. She even bragged about it at the wine club. Kerren turned to stone. Linda hit play. There was Kerren on video, laughing with a glass in her hand, talking about how easy it was to juice up her ride without paying a dime. She even said, he doesn't even know I do it most nights, the crowd murmured. A couple people shook their heads. One guy even laughed out loud. Kerren tried to speak, but the damage was done. Her voice cracked. Her authority evaporated. The HOA turned on her like wolves sensing weakness. You could feel the shift in power like a gust of wind changing direction. By the end of the meeting, she was no longer HOA chair. She resigned before they could vote her out. She claimed it was too much stress, that she needed a break, that the community had changed. What she meant was she got caught, exposed, unplugged in every sense. I didn't say a word, didn't gloat, didn't even smile. I just stood up, nodded to the room and walked away. But inside, I felt electric. 2 days passed, and the silence felt heavier than usual. No morning power theft, no HOA memos, no Kerren. Her Tesla was still gone, and her house looked like it had swallowed its own pride. The blinds stayed shut, the porch remained empty, and the usual click of her heels on the driveway was replaced by nothing at all. But I knew better than to think it was over. Kerren didn't fade quietly. She brooded, calculated. People like her didn't accept defeat. They waited for the moment you let your guard down. I was in my garage sorting wires when the mail came. Among the usual stack of junk was a certified letter from a law firm. My stomach clenched before I even opened it. Inside was a thick document, stamped with legal jargon and threats. Kerren was suing me. Property damage, trespassing, emotional distress. According to her, the electrical incident had not only totaled her Tesla, but caused her to suffer anxiety and loss of reputation. She wanted $20,000 in damages. $20,000 for a car she illegally charged on my property, I laughed at. First, a dry, humorless sound that echoed off the garage walls. It was so absurd it almost felt like a joke. But the letter was real. Her attorney was real. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out, and if I didn't respond, she'd win by default. She thought she could use the system the same way she'd used the HOA. Twist it, bend it, weaponize it. So I got to work. I called my old buddy, Dean. He, was a commercial electrician turned investigator with a gift for tracking electrical anomalies. He agreed to swing by the next day. I explained the setup, the modified outlet, the relay, everything. He inspected it with a grin and said, "This is genius. But yeah, we'll need more than genius in court. We need records." We pulled the usage logs from my smart meter and cross-referenced them with the Tesla's known charging schedule. Spikes in energy consumption matched perfectly with the nights Kerren plugged in. I even had timestamps. Then we grabbed the footage from Linda's video again and synced it. Kerren's voice, laughter, and admission layered over hard data. Dean looked impressed. "This is airtight. But let's go one step further." He had a friend who worked for a local EV service company. We tracked down the tow records for her Tesla and discovered it had been taken to a certified repair center where technicians noted the damage. Internal over-voltage inconsistent grounding burn marks on the charge module. It was all listed in their report. Best part. They noted the cause was due to improper modification of a charging source. Kerren hadn't told them she was using someone else's outlet. She claimed it happened at a public station. They even logged her statement, "Dean's contact got us a copy." It was the smoking gun. One day before the hearing, I sent a copy of the report to Kerren's attorney, along with a formal counterclaim. Not only was I denying all charges I was filing for, damages of my own. Theft, vandalism, tampering with private property, and false legal action. I added a request for HOA interference investigation and let it be known that I had security footage, neighbors' testimonies, and a forensic electrician on standby. The next morning, I saw her pacing her driveway, phone pressed to her ear, sunglasses on at 7 in the morning. She didn't look angry this time. She looked cornered. I arrived at the courthouse with a file so thick it felt like a weapon. Kerren walked in with her lawyer, and the moment she saw me, her mouth twitched. Her expression wasn't smug anymore. It was tight, nervous. The kind of look people get when they realize they're not the smartest person in the room. When the judge asked for opening statements, her lawyer painted me as a hostile neighbor, a vindictive man who rigged his own outlet to harm her property. But when it was my turn, I laid out everything. The photos, the meter logs, the repair report, the testimony, and finally, the video of Kerren bragging to her friends about charging for free. The judge leaned forward, rewound it, and played it again. Her face in that moment was art. Red lips, pursed nostrils, flared eyes darting for an exit that wasn't there. The judge dismissed her claims within 10 minutes. said there was clear evidence of trespassing and misuse of private property. Her attorney tried to object, but it was over. My counterclaims stood. The judge even suggested she settle quickly to avoid further penalties. We walked out of the courthouse, and for the first time I saw Kerren without the armor. No clipboard, no bravado. Just a woman stripped of her illusions, exposed in daylight. She glanced at me as we passed. No words, just a tight-lipped glare that couldn't decide if it was shame or hate. I didn't care back home the neighborhood. Buzzed. People smiled at me more openly. A few even clapped me on the back. Linda brought over a pie and said, "If you ever run for HOA president, you've got my vote." I laughed and told her I'd rather wrestle. Electric eels, still the best part, came a few days later. Someone made a meme. It was a screenshot of Kerren from the video holding a wine glass with the caption, "Free power tastes better," and it went viral. On the neighborhood social group. Dozens of likes, laughing emojis, even a remix video. Her social media quietly vanished the next day. I thought that was the end of it. But Kerren wasn't quite finished. She had one more card to play, and it was the most dangerous one yet. It started with a notice on my door, a plain white envelope taped at eye level. No name, no return address, just a folded sheet of paper inside, with one bold sentence in black ink. "You think this is over?" No signature, no threat, just that one chilling line, like the whisper of a storm before the thunder breaks. I stood there on my porch, paper trembling in my hand, feeling the old tension return, the prickling sense that the battle was not finished. Only paused, Kerren had been humiliated, disgraced, kicked from her pedestal, and dragged into public ridicule. But people like her did not accept ruin. They reinvented it. The next morning, I noticed something odd. My motion lights were flickering, not broken, just twitching, like they were being tested or watched. I reset them, checked the wiring all intact, but that itch behind my neck wouldn't go away. 2 days later, the power in my garage blew out completely. Not just a breaker trip, but a total blackout. Like someone had shorted the line from. Inside, I pulled open the fuse box and found scorch marks that hadn't been there before the copper was warped, and there were fresh tool marks along the casing. Someone had tampered with it. My hands curled into fists. I checked my outdoor security feed and found nothing. No footage, just a full hour mysteriously missing from the night before. Right when the damage occurred, someone had deleted it cleanly, surgically. Like they knew what they were doing. That was the final straw. Kerren was no longer trying to win. She was trying to retaliate. So I set the last trap. I installed a brand new camera system, entirely independent battery powered offline, with encrypted backup stored remotely, and I disguised them inside my porch light's driveway fixtures. And even a fake garden gnome by the hose. I made sure there were no signs, no blinking lights, nothing to give them away. And then I waited. I left the garage door cracked just enough to suggest vulnerability. A bated breath in the dark 3 nights. Later, the trap snapped shut. It was just past 2:30 in the morning when I got the alert on my phone. Motion detected front perimeter. I opened the feed, and there she was. Kerren crouched by my fuse box wearing black gloves and a hoodie. Her platinum hair tucked under a baseball cap. Her face pinched with fury and concentration. She was holding a flathead screwdriver and a phone with a flashlight on her lips, pressed together as she worked quickly. Silently, methodically, I hit record. She opened the panel, reached in, and began tampering with the wires again. But this time, I caught every second high definition, multiple angles, her face, her hands, her tools, her intent. I called the police calmly, clearly, and told them an intruder was on my property. Attempting to sabotage my electrical system, they arrived within 6 minutes, but it was enough time for Kerren to finish her little project and sneak back toward the street. What she didn't know was I had rigged the same circuit she damaged to trigger a silent alarm if accessed again, which is exactly how they caught her less than a block away, walking briskly, phone still in hand, gloves in her pocket, and a spool of stripped copper wire in her hoodie. They brought her back. In cuffs, I stood on my porch, arms crossed, as she looked up at me, blinking into the flashing red and blue lights, her mouth opening like she wanted to speak. But no words came, just a kind of dry, desperate noise, like disbelief caught in her throat. The officers asked. If I wanted to press charges, I nodded once, slowly, deliberately. At the station, she broke down and confessed to everything. The unauthorized charging, the sabotage. The lawsuit even admitted she deleted the footage from my original security system using a jamming device she borrowed from a friend who worked in surveillance. It was all on record, all admissible. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a quiet deal, but it was too late. The DA loved the case. Suburban revenge, techno-drama, clear evidence, perfect. Narrative: Kerren was charged with criminal trespassing, vandalism, attempted property damage, and obstruction of justice. She pled guilty to avoid trial and received 18 months probation, 200 hours of community service, and a $5,000 fine, which I donated directly to a local program that installed solar panels for low-income families. Irony never tasted so sweet. The neighborhood rejoiced. The HOA voted to create a formal code of electrical ethics and installed community charging stations that required approval and tracking. The outlets were locked and regulated, and my name was quietly floated. As the new board chair, I declined again. Still not a fan of clipboards. Kerren moved out 3 months later, her house sold, at a loss, and the listing made no mention of its infamous past, but everyone knew. For weeks after her departure, I'd find little reminders in my mailbox from neighbors. Thank you cards, baked goods. Once even a hand-drawn cartoon of Kerren as a Tesla vampire being zapped by a lightning bolt labeled Karma. But the best part came one sunny afternoon as I worked in my garage replacing some wiring just for fun. A little boy from down the street rode by on his bike and yelled out to me, "Hey, mister, you're the guy who beat the power thief, right?" I laughed and nodded. He gave me a thumbs up and said, "My mom says, you're like Batman, but with wires." And honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better ending than that.